Hi, good morning. Welcome to my Wednesday devotional. I'm so glad to be back. I'm sorry I've been gone for 2 weeks. I had vacation the first week and second week. My family and I were displaced into a hotel while the workmen worked on our ceiling because we had some water damage. So I was unable to record. So I thank you for your patience and hopefully you miss me. I'm just kidding. Anyway, but I'm back, and it's a Wednesday. It's a first day of school for some people, my son included. And so as a result, when you come back from the first day and you've had a long summer and you can't remember, blah, blah, blah. So in that vein, I'm going to go back and go over the 2 verses that I left off at, and then we're going to go forward with the new verses for the week. And yes, we're still in Esther. I'm hoping it'll time out right so that it'll end by next spring, which is, pure time frame. So I'm hoping that all works out, but we'll see. All right, so I hope you guys are having a great summer. And like I said, if it's the first day of school for your child, or if you're in college or something like that, welcome back to school, right? All right, so let's get started. I'm going to do a quick recap. So this was last time, and we're still in Esther 3. This is verses 7, 8. This is recapping. Okay, so remember Haman. Haman, the H. He's the bad guy in this show here. And so now we're setting the stage. The other reason why I wanted to go back over it is because this is an important plot point. Is Haman and what he was doing behind everybody's back and going to the king privately and basically whispering lies. So and how he was gonna annihilate the Jews. So his plot to kill them. So this is an important point. All right, verse 7. So in the month of April, during the 12th year of King Xerxes' reign, lots were cast in Haman's presence. The lots were called Purim. Interesting. To determine the best day and month to take action. And the day selected was March 7th, almost nearly a year later. Verse 8. Then Haman approached King Xerxes and said, "There's a certain race of people scattered through all the provinces of your empire who keep themselves separate from everyone else. Their laws are different from those of any other people, and they refuse to obey the laws of the king. So it is not in the king's interest to let them live." Okay, so that was last time. That was 2 weeks ago, right? If you hopefully you got to see that. Then we move on as Haman's still talking. These are today's verses, verse 9 and 10. "If it please the king, issue a decree that they be destroyed, and I will give 10,000 large sacks of silver to the government administrators to be deposited in the royal treasury." The king agreed, oh boy, and confirming his decision by removing his signet ring from his finger and giving it to Haman, son of Hammedatha the Agagite, the enemy of the Jews. Okay, a couple things here. So this is all part of the same conversation, right? Verse 8, verse 9, where Haman was, in this part, kind of talking down to the king, basically saying, you don't need them to live. He was just, kind of couching it in such a way that it was kind of, putting the king into a box, into a corner, so that what else could the king do to save face, right? He didn't want to look like an idiot. He wanted to look like the king, right? So, I guess I can understand that, giving him a little compassion. Because it's kind of frustrating. He's just like, you read verse 10, the king agreed. Well, but we have the ability of hindsight. We can see that Haman here is a bit of quite a trickster. Okay, we know he's the bad guy, but at the time the king didn't know this. Okay, so interesting. If it pleases the king, and we're going to see that very famous line because Esther uses it, but for good. So it's interesting that Haman uses this for evil. It's interesting. Same phrase. If it pleases the king. And yes, it in the Bible says please, so I write exactly what the Bible says, but in our English, please is present tense, the king, issue a decree that they be destroyed. Now, notice, he wants this destruction of the Jews so bad that Haman's willing to give up basically, we're going to pretend $10,000 or 10,000 large sacks of silver, basically $10,000 of his own personal money to go into the government, into the royal treasury. Now, my first thought is, yeah, right. He's just telling the king that he's going to give 10,000. Show me the money, honey. If I was a king, I'd say, well, let me see the cash. Because I bet you Haman didn't even have 10 grand. I would not be surprised. And I don't think it's ever mentioned after this. It's just kind of assumed that Haman had the 10 grand and he could just go ahead and give it to the king. And I mean, the king didn't ask for the cash, so of course, we know the king. He's very generous. He's like, okay, whatever. He doesn't even check, and plus the king doesn't really need it. But I think really this was Haman's way of just sealing the deal. It didn't matter whether Haman or not had the money. He just wanted to prove, this is so important to me to get all those Jews killed that I'm going to just go ahead and give away $10,000, and that's important to me, And I think Haman was just saying it just to be dramatic, and lend the point that this was so important because they are different, Oh my goodness gracious, just disgusting. And again, that's why we know Haman's the bad guy. Obviously, we know that. But again, king does not. So what does the king do? Okay, pulls off his ring. So when he pulls off his ring to signet ring, that's the, and I'm sorry I'm not wearing my rings because I'm working on some bread right now and I didn't want to get stuff in my rings. Okay, well, the one time I'm not wearing a ring, I'm looking around. I feel like I had one. Okay, here's a flag ring. So when the king is going to pull off his ring, it's a signet ring. Signet ring meaning that's what, and I saw this on somewhere, but just imagine an envelope. They take the thing, they dip it in ink, boom. And once it's sealed, the envelope is closed. It's also a security measure because the receiver, if they see it unsealed, they know someone read the letter, right? So by sealing it shut with the signet ring, with the ink, it's right here. It shows that it's the message secure, but also, boom, it came from the king because only the king is wearing the special ring, right? The king. We'll pretend this is a king ring. It's American flag. So yeah, he's gonna pull it off and dip it, and then and it's sealed, and no one can break it. It's a done deal at that point. So this was really important when he's removing the king removing his signet ring from his finger and giving it to him, and giving it, by the way, giving it to Haman. And why? And here's another point. Why is this title important? Son of Hammedatha, the Agagite. And the reason why Agagite, the enemy of the Jews. So, lots of information here. I know, a lot to absorb. I know it's the first day, first week of school. But this Haman character, bad news, right? So, wow. So that's why this story, we're only still in chapter 3. This is the turn, plot point right here, where Haman was just whispering lies and of the devil right into the king, who, okay, here's the ring, bam, giving it over to Haman. That means Haman got a hold of that ring, is wearing it, and now going forward with Haman having all the power of the king's authority to write out now these letters, which we now know is like email or a letter with the post office or something like that. But back then, those letters were so important. It was the king's message to everybody, the decrees that went out, and then there'd be messengers either on foot or on horseback, and to deliver it to the other officers. So this ring's important, all the power in this ring. So Haman got it. Wow. Okay, so we're gonna see what happens next. Gotta stay tuned. All right, so wrapping up all these verses, where in your life are you seeing someone who's a bad guy getting all the power? And it feels like the good guys are losing, right? Because the Jews they're scheduled to be terminated in almost a year later. That's a problem. It really is. And I couldn't even imagine, and the reason why it was like for a whole year later is because of this ring, had to get these messages out, so by the time the Jews were going to be finding out, it might be too late. So we'll see how can Esther save the day, So please do be thinking about that, Are you seeing this kind of stuff going on in people or out in the news or something like that? Where does this apply? Good point. All right, well, thanks for watching. I know there's a lot of information today, so I appreciate you very much. I thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next week so we can find out what happens next. All right, take care. Bye-bye.